Hey Sopranos fans, welcome to another episode here on Bully Whispers, and we are here today to decide who is crazier and more dangerous, Richie Aprile or Ralph Cifaretto. Now, while this may seem like splitting hairs when it comes to these two nut jobs, and the results of the viewer poll reflect this, they are quite different, and these differences make for a very interesting comparison. So in this episode, we will compare Richie and Ralphie in terms of their temperaments, their social skills, their intellect and their strategic ability, before diving into who is crazier and who is more dangerous, both to an uninvolved civilian and to a fellow gangster. Spoiler alert, it's not the same for both. Of course, if you disagree, let me know down in the comments. When comparing these two in terms of who has the better temperament, the nod has to go to Richie Aprile. Sure, he may always be surly, but when he does get violent, it is for a reason. Often a dumb or petty reason, but a reason nonetheless. After all, Beansy would still be selling nickel bags on Jefferson Avenue if it hadn't been for his brother Jackie. In that sense, his anger is much more focused, and he is often much nicer to the people who aren't directly involved, which we see both with Beansy's waiter and David Scatino's son.
Can I help you with something, sir?
Yeah, I want to buy a boat with 3 propellers.
With Ralphie, while it may seem like he should have had the better temperament because he isn't always in a bad mood, his wild mood swings don't exactly make a good case for mental stability.
I was doing a lot of coke.
And while that may have quite a bit to do with it, even if the shoe was on the other foot and it was Richie doing a lot of coke,
Got any blow?
There's a bear shit in the woods.
I still don't think he would have ever beat a woman to death who was pregnant with his child the way Ralphie did. After all, we find out later from Roe that he disowned his own son after he found out that he was gay, yet he still punched Janice in the face, not even for saying that his son was gay, but simply for asking so what if he is. Clearly, Richie is someone who takes the Aprile name very seriously. Of course, Janice kills him shortly thereafter, which is funny because he had previously warned Christopher not to hit Adriana until he gave her his last name, and Richie had yet to give Janice his. Moving on to social skills, the Miss Congeniality Award goes to Richie Aprile. Despite being almost incapable of small talk, he does have an awareness of social boundaries, at least in a mafia context, that Ralphie just does not. Where Richie will leave David Scatino, a civilian who can't do anything about it, son alone, Ralphie will prank call Polly Walnuts, a made man's mother.
The county does not cover medical procedures deemed caused by criminal sexual activity.
Even Ralphie's strength in terms of social skills, his ability to be witty, is often misplaced and just leads to more problems.
Well, look at the bright side. Wasn't that smart to begin with?
Quick side note, while I do think it's quite ironic that he made that statement, and then his own son ended up in the hospital for trying to catch an arrow with a box target, given the emotion of the situation, I certainly won't hold his outburst in the hospital against him.
Stop! Well, stop.
Collaborate and listen.
Of course, Ralphie met his ultimate demise when his wild temperament intersected with his lack of social awareness, and he decided to insult and upset Tony when they were all alone, and he had just set a fire that killed Pyomai.
No fires. Tony doesn't want any fires.
Obviously, he was referring to a different fire, but it is interesting how the two craziest characters were both killed after having done something that they had either been warned or warned someone else not to do. It's important to note here that Ralphie's lack of awareness isn't due to a lack of overall intelligence, as he is one of the smarter gangsters on the show, and certainly more intelligent than Richie Aprile. However, his problem is that even though he may be smarter than most of them, he never really has a plan. He just sort of bounces back and forth between trying to beef with Tony, then trying to make up, maybe he'll switch over to New York, oh no wait, never mind, he can't, and he never really develops any strategy for the future. Richie, on the other hand, just like his reasons may be dumb, but they are reasons nonetheless, his plans may not be good.
It's Tony that's the fucking problem. You take him out of the picture, and believe me, everybody's gonna come along.
But they are plans nonetheless. With these things in mind for context, we can move on to the meat and potatoes of this discussion: who is crazier and who is more dangerous? Well, one statement has Ralphie sprinting towards the front of the crazy line.
He told me to rub his dick raw with the cheese grater.
Now, Richie may have his own quirks in that department, which I'm not going to get into here, so have at it in the comments, but that is a sick mind indeed. Assuming that you're willing to overlook that, Ralphie does have one thing going for him. He actually shows a moment of empathy with Roe. That being said, I'm not a shrink, nor am I trying to diagnose any particular mental illness they may have. I'm just going off the layman's concept of what crazy is, and beating a woman to death who is pregnant with your child can't be overlooked just because you shared a cry with your ex when your son was in the hospital. We never really see Richie doing anything quite as crazy as we see Ralphie doing. Maybe he just calmed down over the years.
Not as crazy as I used to be. Still crazy enough to take an eye out.
So, Ralphie deserves the nickname Crazy more than Richie. This brings us to the question of who is more dangerous between the two, and we are going to look at that question from the perspective of both an uninvolved civilian and a fellow gangster. To an uninvolved civilian, Ralphie is more dangerous, and it's largely due to his wild mood swings. With Richie, unless you piss him off or owe him money, you're probably in the clear. Now, when it comes to who is more dangerous to another gangster, this is a different story. Sure, Ralphie is smarter, a better leader, and has a wider sphere of influence due to how much he earns, but he also can't shut up, so he probably won't surprise you with much. Beyond that, there are a few factors that make Richie more dangerous, but the biggest is that, especially when dealing with someone with some weight behind their name, Richie is far more likely to throw the first punch than Ralphie. Combine that with the fact that you might not know Richie is after you, and that he might actually have a plan, and he is much more dangerous than the easy to read because he can't shut up Ralph Cifaretto, who is hesitant to throw the first punch, and even if he does, probably has no plan to back it up. Well, thanks for watching another episode here on Bully Whispers. As always, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you at the next score.